Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you've ever felt like life's complexities demand more than just structure, more than just order, you're not alone. Today, we're diving into Jordan B. Peterson's follow-up to his global phenomenon, 12 Rules for Life. This sequel, Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life, isn't a mere extension of his earlier work. It's a counterbalance, a deep exploration of why we must sometimes step beyond the rules we cling to, embracing chaos to grow, create, and evolve. We'll unpack Peterson's 12 new rules, their philosophical roots, and how they confront the dangers of rigidity in a world that demands both stability and adaptability. Whether you're a longtime Peterson reader or new to his ideas, this breakdown will challenge you to rethink how you navigate relationships, ambition, suffering, and the eternal dance between tradition and transformation. Let's begin by understanding why Peterson wrote this sequel, and why Beyond Order is just as vital as order itself. Context and the necessity of chaos. To grasp Beyond Order, we must first revisit Peterson's foundational premise: life is a balancing act between order, structure, safety, predictability, and chaos, uncertainty, creativity, the unknown. While 12 Rules for Life focused on building stability amid chaos, this sequel warns against the peril of too much order. Peterson argues that rigid adherence to rules, whether societal, religious, or self-imposed, can stifle growth, breed resentment, and leave us unprepared for life's inevitable disruptions. Drawing on clinical experience, mythological narratives, and existential philosophy, he posits that true resilience requires venturing into the unknown, even when it feels dangerous. The book arrives during a cultural moment marked by polarized ideologies, where many cling to dogma for comfort. Beyond Order challenges this, urging readers to reconcile the chaos of potential with the discipline of actuality. It's not a rejection of rules, but a call to wield them wisely, to know when to hold fast and when to let go. The central theme, transcending dogma. At its core, Beyond Order is about transcending dogma without collapsing into nihilism. Peterson warns that unchecked order becomes tyranny, institutions calcify, relationships turn stagnant, and individuals trap themselves in safe but soul-crushing routines. Chaos, in moderation, is the antidote. It's the space where art, innovation, and self-discovery thrive. But chaos unchecked is equally destructive. The book's 12 rules, then, are guideposts for navigating this tension. They teach us to honor tradition while questioning it, to commit deeply without losing ourselves, and to embrace suffering as a catalyst for meaning. Peterson weaves in themes from classic stories like Pinocchio and The Lion King, framing them as allegories for the human struggle to balance security and growth. This isn't abstract theory, it's a survival manual for a world where change is the only constant. Rule 1: Do not carelessly deny what worked in the past. Rule 1 confronts modernity's tendency to dismiss tradition as outdated or oppressive. Peterson argues that cultural practices, rituals, and norms often endure because they encode hard-won wisdom, lessons about cooperation, sacrifice, and human nature refined over millennia. Carelessly discarding them, whether in the name of progress or rebellion, risks losing solutions to problems we don't yet understand. He cites the collapse of communal structures and the rise of existential anxiety as consequences of this rejection. However, this isn't a call for blind conformity. Peterson urges a middle path: study the past, understand its lessons, and adapt, don't obliterate, what worked. This rule sets the tone for the book, emphasizing humility in the face of inherited knowledge while leaving room for reimagining its application. Rule 2: Imagine who you could be and aim single-mindedly at that. Rule 2 is a meditation on potential. Peterson posits that humans are uniquely capable of envisioning future selves, versions of who we might become if we harnessed our strengths and confronted our flaws. Yet many squander this ability, drifting through life without direction or settling for good enough. To aim single-mindedly at your ideal self requires brutal honesty. What habits hold you back? What virtues do you lack? What mission gives your life weight? Peterson ties this to responsibility, the idea that pursuing your highest potential isn't selfish, but a moral obligation. By striving to embody your best self, you contribute to the world in ways only you can. This rule rejects both complacency and grandiosity, advocating for incremental, disciplined growth. Rule 3. Do not hide unwanted things in the fog. Rule 3 tackles avoidance, the human tendency to obscure problems we'd rather not face. Peterson uses the fog as a metaphor for denial, procrastination, and half-truths that cloud unresolved conflicts. Whether it's a failing relationship, a career misalignment, or unaddressed trauma, hiding issues in the fog only amplifies their power. Peterson draws on clinical examples, patients who numb their pain with distractions or lie to themselves until their lives unravel. Clarity, he argues, is curative. Shining a light on unwanted things, naming them, dissecting them, and formulating a plan reduces their terror. This rule is a call to courage. Confront what frightens you before it metastasizes into chaos you can't control. Rule 4. Notice that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated. Rule 4 reframes responsibility as opportunity. Peterson observes that many of life's most meaningful chances arise in spaces others have abandoned, neglected relationships, underserved communities, or industries resistant to change. Abdicated responsibility creates vacuums, and those willing to step into the breach often find purpose and mastery. He ties this to the concept of meaning, arguing that fulfilling work isn't about comfort but shouldering burdens others avoid. This isn't martyrdom, it's strategic discernment. By identifying where your skills meet the world's needs, you carve a niche that demands, and rewards, your highest contribution. Rule 5. Abandon ideology. Use your own judgment. Rule 5 is a direct challenge to the seductive allure of ideological thinking. Peterson argues that ideologies, rigid systems of belief, whether political, religious, or cultural, promise simplicity in a complex world. They offer predefined answers, reducing human experience to slogans and absolutes. But this, he warns, comes at a cost. Ideologies demand conformity, suppress nuance, and alienate individuals from their own moral agency. Peterson draws parallels to totalitarian regimes and modern polarization, where allegiance to dogma overrides empathy and critical thought. To abandon ideology doesn't mean rejecting principles, it means prioritizing judgment, the ability to weigh circumstances, context, and compassion when making decisions. This rule champions intellectual humility. Recognize that no single framework can account for life's complexity. True wisdom lies in balancing learned truths with the courage to question them, even when it's uncomfortable. Rule 6. Cast ideals into the future. Work redemptively in the present. Rule 6 grapples with the tension between perfectionism and pragmatism. Peterson acknowledges the human desire for utopian ideals, flawless relationships, careers, or societies, but warns against letting these fantasies paralyze action. Ideals belong to the future, they are stars to navigate by, not prisons to chain the present. Working redemptively means accepting that progress is incremental and often messy. It's the parent striving to be patient despite exhaustion, the artist refining a draft, or the activist tackling small injustices while dreaming of systemic change. Peterson ties this to the concept of sacrifice. Meaningful work requires tolerating imperfection while inching toward betterment. This rule rejects both cynicism, nothing will ever change, and grandiosity, only perfection is acceptable, advocating instead for a redemptive mindset. Do what you can, now, with what you have. Rule 7. Work as though you are serving the divine. Rule 7 elevates labor to a sacred act. Peterson critiques modern work culture, which often reduces jobs to transactional exchanges, hours for money, labor for status. To work as though serving the divine is to infuse daily tasks with reverence, regardless of their scale. This isn't about religiosity but recognizing that excellence in work contributes to a collective good. A janitor maintaining cleanliness, a teacher nurturing curiosity, or a leader stewarding trust, all enact a form of service that transcends the self. Peterson frames this as an antidote to existential despair. Purpose emerges not from what we do, but how we do it. By treating work as a covenant with the divine, or with our highest ideals, we transform mundane acts into meaningful rituals, aligning effort with a deeper moral order. Rule 8. Try to make one room in your home as beautiful as possible. Rule 8 is a meditation on the relationship between environment and psyche. Peterson uses the metaphor of a single beautiful room to illustrate the power of localized order. In a world of chaos, cultivating a space of harmony, whether through art, cleanliness, or intentional design, anchors the soul. This isn't about materialism but about creating a microcosm of stability that radiates outward. A well-ordered room becomes a refuge, a reminder that beauty and control are possible even amid life's turbulence. Peterson extends this to psychological spaces. Tending to one's mind, relationships, or habits with similar care creates pockets of sanity. The rule is both practical and symbolic. Start small, master what's within your reach, and let that discipline inspire broader transformation. Rule 9: if old memories still upset you, write them down carefully and completely. Rule 9 delves into the therapeutic power of narrative. Peterson, drawing from his clinical practice, argues that unresolved trauma lingers because it remains fragmented, a jumble of emotions and images without structure. Writing memories carefully and completely forces the mind to organize chaos into coherence. This process isn't about catharsis alone, it's about reclaiming agency. By translating vague pain into concrete words, you objectify it, making it manageable. Peterson likens this to ancient traditions of storytelling, where myths and parables transform collective suffering into shared wisdom. The act of writing becomes a ritual of integration. You are no longer haunted by the past but can hold it at a distance, analyze it, and ultimately, transcend it. Rule 10: plan and work diligently to maintain the romance in your relationship. Rule 10 confronts the myth of passive love. Peterson argues that romantic relationships decay without intentional effort. Passion fades not because of time, but neglect, assuming a partner's loyalty, taking intimacy for granted, or avoiding difficult conversations. Planning and working diligently means treating love as a verb, scheduling date nights, cultivating shared goals, and addressing resentments before they fester. He critiques modern individualism, which prioritizes personal fulfillment over relational sacrifice. Love, Peterson insists, is a disciplined choice to prioritize us over me, even when it's inconvenient. This rule isn't about grand gestures but daily acts of attention, the quiet, relentless labor of keeping a bond alive in a world that pulls people apart. Rule 11: do not allow yourself to become resentful, deceitful, or arrogant. Rule 11 targets the toxic triad of resentment, deceit, and arrogance, emotional states that corrode integrity. Peterson dissects resentment as a slow poison, the result of unexpressed grievances that mutate into bitterness. Deceit, whether lying to others or oneself, fractures reality, breeding distrust and self-loathing. Arrogance, the delusion of superiority, alienates and isolates. Together, these traits form a feedback loop of suffering. Breaking free requires vigilance. Acknowledge grievances before they calcify, speak truth even when it's painful, and replace pride with humility. Peterson frames this as a moral imperative. These vices don't just harm the individual, they ripple outward, damaging families, workplaces, and communities. The rule is a call to self-audit. Regularly examine your motives and clean the emotional rot before it spreads. Rule 12: be grateful in spite of your suffering. The final rule is perhaps the most paradoxical: gratitude amid suffering. Peterson doesn't dismiss pain or advocate for toxic positivity. Instead, he argues that gratitude is a rebellion against nihilism, a refusal to let hardship erase life's beauty. Suffering is inevitable, but so are moments of grace, a sunrise, a friend's laughter, a fleeting sense of peace. By consciously noting these, we dilute despair's grip. Peterson ties this to existential philosophy. Meaning isn't found despite suffering but woven through it. Gratitude, then, becomes a discipline, a way to anchor oneself in what remains good and worthy. This isn't passive acceptance but active defiance. Even in darkness, you choose to see and cultivate light. Conclusion: the dance beyond order. So, what does it mean to live beyond order? Peterson's sequel isn't a rejection of rules, but a plea for balance. Chaos and order are not enemies, they are partners in the dance of existence. Too much rigidity stifles growth, too much chaos destroys. These 12 rules guide us to navigate that tension, to honor tradition while embracing change, to work diligently while staying open to wonder, to confront pain while nurturing gratitude. In a world clamoring for certainty, Beyond Order offers no easy answers. Instead, it asks us to hold the line between discipline and flexibility, to build structures sturdy enough to shelter us, but permeable enough to let life in. If 12 Rules for Life was a manifesto for stability, this is a roadmap for courageous evolution. Thanks for joining this deep dive. If it resonated, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments which rule challenges you the most. Until next time, keep dancing on that edge between order and chaos.